Yo, finally we have part 2 of the Elden Ring boss tier list. Today we'll be covering the bosses from the DLC. Just want to quickly say thanks for the support on the first video. You guys showed it a lot of love, so had to bring out part 2. If any of you did miss it, feel free to check it out. I would link it in the description, but I'm lazy as fuck. You know, just go on my page, scroll down a little bit, it'll be there. Of course, a lot of people didn't like it. I tried too hard to have a hot take that contradicts 95% of people's experience. I stopped watching your list when I saw Godric at D. What the fuck? This is the type of opinion you start forming after years of Fortnite. Oh god. He's caught us out, boys. How did he know? I have a confession to make. This is my secret second channel. I'm actually a pro Fortnite gamer. Nah, jokes aside, it's all love. This is the beauty of putting your opinions out there on the internet. Some people will agree, some people not so much, and that's fine. You know, we all have different experiences with the bosses. It's all good. If you like a boss that I don't, calm. I'm sure there'll be bosses that you like that I think are dog shit too. So at the end of the day, we're just here for a good time. Anyways, let's go. All right, let's begin with Dancing Lion. I've also added an SS tier this time because shit, these bosses were good. It's the same with the base game though. I ended up putting like 8 bosses in S tier or something. I think we could do with some more separation. I think for a lot of us, Dancing Lion was probably the first boss we found. Either him or Alana, I would guess. My intuition is telling me to put it in A tier. I feel like there's just going to be some bias here because he was my first boss I found. There was so much hype on release day, man. I remember too, on day 1, everyone was getting their ass beat. I swear, these bosses were brutal. Obviously, some of us knew about the Skidoo fragments, but I don't think a lot of us knew how important they were, right? So walking up to the Dancing Lion for the first time was a fucking experience. Got absolutely bodied. It was definitely a fun fight though. One of the more unique bosses as well, like having it cycle through all the elements and stuff. Honestly, it felt like a movie. Like it starts off with lightning, then it had like wind and ice. Like, bro, it was so good. I love how the soundtrack matched with the elements it was pairing with. Super interactive too, the way that the arena would sort of change as well. I think the difficulty was perfect as well at the time. I just remember being humbled so bad by this boss, man. I went into DLC at like level 160 thinking I was going to be over leveled, but no, it wasn't even close. I think some people had problems with the camera, but I don't recall it being that much of a problem for me. Overall, I think this was a great intro boss to the DLC. I think A tier is probably appropriate. Of course, I'm not going to mention the second Dancing Lion that had a Death Blight stage. Oh my god, what a nightmare that was. To this day, I can't believe they did that. Shit was so unnecessary. Next up, we have R'Lana. Honestly, R'Lana was so fun. Very good boss. Also very underappreciated. Most of the praise gets given to like Mesmer and Bale, which is completely fair. But R'Lana was so good. She was also pretty similar to Margit, as in she completely humbles you as soon as you start the DLC. I remember there being debates on like whether she's harder than Melania when it first came out. I think people have come to the conclusion that she's not. Back then, it genuinely felt like it. Like fighting R'Lana for the first time was fucking nuts. She had so many combos that felt like they just never ended. But even still, you could find ways to like weave in attacks here and there, which was nice. She's pretty elegant. I liked her theme as well. The whole fight just felt classy, you know. The highlight of this fight, obviously, the fucking double moons. If we're being real, that shit was so funny. I know there's people that get angry at that sort of stuff, but I thought it was fucking hilarious. The fact that you could go from full health to just dead, that's peak design. Caught so many of us off guard. I mean, I felt like a victim. I felt violated. Her phase 2 was super cool as well, with her fire and magic. Just generally a really good fight. It was super rewarding finally beating her. I have to go S tier for R'Lana. I don't think she was the best boss in the DLC, but overall can't really fault the fight. It was really good. Her design was pretty nice as well. Next up, Romina. How did we rank Romina? Romina has honestly been a bit divisive in the community I saw. I liked her quite a bit, but she definitely wasn't a fan favorite. I think a lot of people found her underwhelming for some reason. Like people thought she was just a bad Melania. Like her Scarlet Rot build-up was pretty much non-existent. I think there's only like one move that really got you. You know, when she grabs you and just stabs the shit out of you. I feel like she had one of the better designs. You know, I think girls in pink are usually pretty hot, but that's just more of a reflection of me being down bad. But the whole human and insect hybrid, I thought went pretty hard. I think Romina was probably the easiest remembrance boss out of all of them. Romina's soundtrack I also think was severely underrated. I thought it was really nice. But yeah, probably a bit mediocre, I guess, compared to the other bosses. So I guess we just leave Romina in B tier. Very solid, but wasn't too much to write home about. Next up, Mesmer the Impaler. I want to apologize in advance because the glaze is going to be violent. For me, Mesmer was not only the best boss in the DLC, he might be my favorite boss in the entire game. Like, Like, bro, it was so good. Pretty much whatever you want to talk about surrounding this fight was just peak, in my opinion. The build-up was super good. Hearing about Mesmer through some of the NPCs. And then you go through the Shadow Keep, get molested by the golden fucking hippo. I was a changed man after that fight for all the wrong reasons. But then you finally make it. All the candles just come on. Fucking jump scare with the snake. Bro just starts talking shit, calling you a mongrel intruder. I swear, man, the feeling of fighting Mesmer for the first time, it cannot be replicated. I think the reason the fight was the most fun for me was purely from like a progression standpoint. Like, it was one of them fights that felt impossible when you first started, but the longer it went on, the more you started to believe. Like, some of his moves felt fucking crazy at first. Like, you know that move where he sort of like surfs past you and then he 180s and just... I remember seeing that shit for the first time, being so overwhelmed. But you give it a little time and his attack started feeling so balanced. You know, he had lots of good windows you could punish. Was extremely challenging and satisfying to win. And then you had phase 2, man. Holy fuck. Phase 2 cutscene was raw. Bro pulling his own eye out. Shit was crazy. I think the main criticism at the time, I don't know if they fixed it yet. I haven't gone back and played it. I've still only played DLC one time. One of his snake moves when they all bite down, I think the hitboxes were a bit janky. To be fair, when I look back, a lot of his hitboxes weren't the best during his snake attacks, but they weren't like game-breakingly bad. You could live with it. I guess final thing to touch on, his soundtrack. Bro, his soundtrack is so good. It was one of them ones when the main part kicked in and I just fully lost focus. Just rolled straight to my death because I was in shock of what I was hearing. Definitely one of the best soundtracks in the DLC for me. It's got to be top 3. But anyways, ranking Mesmer's never been easier. Clear fucking SS tier for me. Best boss in the DLC, in my opinion. Next up, Erdtree Avatar, aka Big Sunflower. This boss is kind of funny to me because everyone said it was so obvious it was going to come back like after you kill it the first time because it was so easy. I remember fighting this guy with a Reduvia and straight blood build and it was miserable. So I was kind of pissed when it came back the second time. Like, bro, when I tell you I was struggling. I think this boss was one of the worst bosses in the DLC. I don't think it was horrendous, but I also don't think it was good. Obviously, I'm going to have a bias as I was using a bleed build, but it doesn't change the fact it was kind of boring. I understand he does get a little bit harder with each phase, but it mainly just felt like a battle of attrition. Rather than like a fun, skillful fight, it was just, can I survive 4 minutes without fucking up? I just don't agree with the combat philosophy around it. Like phase 2, it would just try and run away from you and then just throw a bunch of thorns. It sort of gives me Elden Beast vibes in that sense. Like every time you try and get close to it, it wants to just run away. I don't fuck with that personally. I want a boss that's going to stand there and actually fight me instead of trying to just make as much distance as possible. Oh, and the nuclear bomb in phase 3, man, was not a good time. I died to it so many times. The charge up time was like, what, 3 or 4 seconds, I think. Like trying to time it was just a pain in my dick. And like depending on your build, this fight can be very easy because if you've got a strength build or something, after he does the nuke you can probably just kill him because bro just goes and takes a nap, doesn't he? But for me, this fight was no good. It was no good at all. So for me, this one, C tier. Not the worst boss in the DLC, but it was not one I enjoyed. I remember saying in the other tier list video, there's some bosses you look forward to fighting and other bosses that are sort of just there. Like if you're going to do like a level 1 challenge run or a no hit or whatever, this boss just has to be a nightmare. Anyways, let's move on. Putrescent Knight. You know what? I didn't hate this fight. Even though I had a bleed build, obviously this guy doesn't bleed, felt kind of fun for me. I think his moves were really well telegraphed. Like it just felt super satisfying dodging him for some reason. I actually really like that combo horse attack as well, where he jumps off and fucking charges at you, and then the horse comes out of the ground and fucking charges you as well. He's out here doing some acrobatic fucking backflips and shit attacking you. Like I thought it was cool once you get the pattern down. I thought the soundtrack was super good as well. The overall atmosphere and vibe for the area was fucking cool. I just think Putrescent Knight, I feel like he's actually underappreciated. I don't think he was the best boss in the game, but I feel like he deserves more love. So I will keep him in B tier with Romina. Definitely better than the Sunflower, but I guess the other bosses were better. Sugi, Midra, Lord of Frenzied Flame. What a boss this was, man. Holy fuck. Midra in general was just a movie, bro. Similar to Mesmer and Bale, the build up to Midra was so good. Going through that haunted forest, it was actually pretty scary at the time, but looking back, oh, that shit was comedy. It was so funny as well because I did not read the messages. I did not read the warnings at all. Those guys grabbing you and just sucking the life out of you. Probably the one time I'm okay being molested in a video game. It was just funny more than anything. And then working your way through the haunted house, hearing the screams of Midra. Jesus, I'm straight up just reminiscing right now. And then you had the boss fight itself. Honestly, it was just peak. Definitely one of the best soundtracks in the game. You might not think it was the best one, but it was definitely the hardest one. Shit was so good. On top of that, his attacks were really elegant. It was weird. They were kind of hard to dodge. Like, it was one of them ones that was slow and fast at the same time. But Midra, man, what a guy. Also, the cutscene was tough. Seeing him say fuck it and just embrace the frenzied flame. Actual goosebumps, man. Easily one of the best bosses. I'm gonna have to put him in double S alongside Mesmer. This fight was incredible. The whole vibe and atmosphere of this fight was just perfection. Next up, Commander Gaius. Man, this boss makes me sick. This was easily the worst Remembrance boss. It wasn't even close either. This fight was miserable. Bro was just a poor man's Gyobu. The most frustrating and obnoxious boss of this DLC. And it's crazy because it could easily have been fixed by just removing one move. Like, what I tell you, this guy just charged me, just rammed the fuck out of me over and over and over. It was so annoying. It was such a hard move to dodge as well. I swear it didn't matter if you rolled forward, left, right, like you're hitting something. It was crazy as well because it didn't matter how close he was. Bro, it would be like 2 inches in front of you. He would just start ramming you out of nowhere. I feel like that attack should have only been used if you was far away and he wanted to close the gap. But the fact he could be an inch in front of you and then just ram the fuck out of you. I hear they have patched it a little bit and the boss isn't anywhere near as bad as it was on release, but I've only played it within that first week. I haven't touched the DLC since June, right? So, but yeah, that fight was sadness, bro. I swear it was so loud as well. All of his gravity attacks just destroyed my eardrums unnecessarily. His boss arena was nothing to write home about. And I think this just sums up how fucking lame he is. He had the same music as the other commanders, man. What were those fat motherfuckers called? Commander O'Neill, Commander Niall. He had the same music as them dickheads. If you have to share your boss music with someone else, you're not him. You will never be him. He wants to be him. At the end of the day, he's just a dickhead. So you should probably see this coming. D tier. Fuck this guy and his pig. Nah, you know, his pig didn't do anything wrong. It wasn't his fault. Next up, Bale the Dread. Bale the Dread for a lot of people is the best boss in this DLC, and I can see why. Bale might have had the best build up to any boss I've ever fought. It's almost incomprehensible how good it was. Just strolling through the map, you just hear Egon just fucking screaming. He tells you about Bale the Dread. You progress further through the jagged peak. The atmosphere and the environment is just slowly getting worse and worse. See all these dragons fighting to the fucking death. It is raining, it's storming. The sky is red. Oh, it was so good. And then you finally make it to the boss arena and it is immaculate. It's just carcasses everywhere. And the thing is, all of this hasn't even mentioned the fucking boss fight itself. The boss fight itself was pristine. Like, phase 1 was solid. It was cool. But phase 2, bro, the transformation of phase 2... This fight was actual cinema. I didn't think it'd be possible to rival Placidusax in terms of like having a cinematic fight, but this shit was insane. On top of that, his soundtrack was really fucking good. I don't know about you, but I had a lot of moments where the music would sync perfectly. Shit just went so hard. If you can't tell by now where we're putting Bale, Bale was going in double S, topping off the big three of Mesmer, Midra, and Bale. I think they're the best 3 bosses in the DLC. They were so perfect, man. Like, FromSoft killed it with these 3 in particular. Yeah, shout out Bale. The fight was fucking awesome. Next up, Finger Mama. What's her name? I think it's Matir. I'll be honest, I wasn't too big a fan of this fight. I think the boss fight itself was very mediocre. I think the quest to get in there was all right, but I have a very big grudge because this quest just pissed me off. I think my main issue with the DLC in general is just that the world felt super empty at times because I am someone that likes to explore every single fucking corner of the map, right? And I remember getting to the first finger area and it was fucking giant, right? I was looking around that bitch for 25 minutes not knowing that the only thing there was a bell. Oh, you have no idea how tilted I was after that. Obviously, the next finger ruin, I just got the bell and got out. But man, I was so frustrated from that. So going into the fight after that was not the best. On top of that, her moves felt a bit weird. Like half the time she was just flailing around, just headbutting the fuck out of everyone, giving herself a concussion. Her phase 2 is pretty cool, but I missed her coolest move. Now, she has a move that's like 20 seconds long, but I was like stood right up on her. It just went straight over my head. I found her pretty late. I think I had like 15 blessings at that point, so she was just really easy. Overall, underwhelming fight for me. I'll put her in C tier. Found her a bit more enjoyable than the Sunflower, but was not the best. And then last but not least, we have Radahn. Or should we say Radahn. Radahn was easily the craziest fight of the DLC, and I think it got too much hate. Now, I've only fought pre-nerf Radahn. I haven't even fought him since getting nerfed, so I don't know how much easier he is now. This is the first time in like any game I have felt overwhelmed by a boss. Like, this is the first time I thought to myself, bro, I might not be able to do this. Phase 1 was tough enough as it is. Some of his combos, you know, especially his 3-piece one, like, you literally couldn't dodge it without backstepping. And most of us didn't know about backstepping back then. Phase 2, man. Phase 2 pre-nerf was the most overwhelming shit I've ever dealt with. The fact that every single attack was followed up by Holy was insane. And I know that with the nerf, they've stopped some of the chaining of some of the attacks. Like, some of his attacks chained back to back were fucking impossible to dodge. All I can say is that it was an experience pre-nerf Radahn. I think the main issue with Radahn is not that he was hard. It was just the fact that he was so much harder than everyone else, right? He was so much harder than every other boss. It was unreal. Like, the trajectory for the DLC is it starts off mega hard, and then you get up to like blessing 10 to 15, and then it suddenly just feels easy. And then you get to Radahn, and it's like that same jump again, except there's nowhere else you can go. You can't progress any further. You can't just go and get more blessings for most of us, right? It was absurdly difficult, man. I think regardless of that, though, I still found it very fun. I'm someone who likes being challenged. Feeling like I couldn't win for the first time was a weird feeling. Bro, I fucking loved how they brought the meteor back, though. I lost my shit when that happened. Such a nice callback to the OG Radahn. Also, the soundtrack was super good. The only problem was I could never live long enough to hear it. I could never get to the good part of the soundtrack because I would just die immediately. Pretty much every boss in this DLC, I would beat within like 20 tries, right? It came to Radahn, bro. I died 68 times. I think the final critique as well is it felt rewarding to beat him, but the conclusion to the DLC felt kind of lackluster. I don't know if it's because there was no after credits or whatever, but just getting a little cutscene at the end, it just didn't do it for me, considering the fucking war we just went through. The other complaints were people just wishing that there was a different boss other than Radahn. You know, people were saying that they wanted Godwin or whatever, but pretty sure Godwin is dead, right? I don't agree with that take, not because of Godwin, but I just think it's stupid to not like something because it doesn't go your way. I see it in anime all the time. Like, people were like, oh my god, this character didn't fuck this character. The show is ruined. It's the same sort of vibe with this. Like, you could just accept that Radahn is the final boss. It wasn't even bad. It was actually built up pretty nice as well. I don't know how many people spoke to Ansbach, but he literally says like they're gonna put Mohg's remains in Radahn's body, right? So if you do extensively do the side quests, you can actually learn that going into it, which is pretty cool. I guess that's another critique. I wish that there was more Mohg abilities in this. I think there's only like 1 or 2 Mohg attacks, right? Like, it should have either looked more like Mohg or had more of Mohg's abilities. Like, they did Mohg dirty. He should have had more impact on the final fight. It didn't really feel like you're fighting Mohg at all, even though it's his fucking body, right? So I guess that's my thoughts on Radahn. I would personally put Radahn in S. I think it was a very good fight, a very iconic fight, but I can't put it with the big 3 in good conscience. There was too much wrong with it, right? But it was still one of the best fights in the DLC. But anyways, that's all from me. To everyone who likes and comments, appreciate the fuck out of you. But yeah, peace.